And now, Art, we have another subject to talk about. We have dropping enrollment in the Duluth School District. And we know full well that there is going to be a new charter school being built. I think it's going to be ready for 2017. I don't think it's going to be ready for the 2016 school year. However, the impact of dropping enrollment on the district, which is happening right now, is going to even be greater. Approximately about 600 students, if that figure that I've had is correct. So let's talk about that and the impact that it's going to have once that's built. These people that have been sending their children to Hermantown and Proctor and Renshaw and a variety of other school options are now going to have their kids at the charter school, which, by the way, has a waiting list. What is the amount of money per student that the district will lose? The allotment that comes from, I think it's both state and federal. What is that impact going to have on the school district and the taxpayers? Because remember, you're going to be paying for the red plan, aptly named, for another 16 years. I think we're 4 years into paying it down now, but we're still going to be paying for it, but we aren't going to have the kids to help us pay it down. So would you like to, from your knowledge, tell the viewing audience just what the impact's going to be?
Well, I'm not sure that Edison itself is going to be a big impact. Is it going to be an impact? Yes. Is it going to worsen our situation to be able to, say, for example, we have fixed costs in the Duluth schools. We have certain fixed costs. We just built $350 million in new buildings, and they take energy, they take a janitorial, they take the basic maintenance of a building. That amounts to a lot. And of course, the biggest thing is the debt payment. We have to pay off this $350 million in debts that we took out to pay for it. That's just what you do. When you build new buildings, you can take out loans, and then you got to pay them off. So you're right. It's actually, I think it's still about 18 years to go for the debts. So they kept extending them out. The last ones were made in 2012, and they were 20-year debts. So it's 2032 would be the last payment, I believe, somewhere in there. So we have it is an impact. For sure, it's a big impact for me because our Duluth school enrollment has been dropping. I've been trying to bring up that issue, of course, with the current school board, and of course you've been to some of the meetings, and you see the faces that some of the school board members make when I bring up this stuff. It's really hilarious. It's kind of sad, but complete denial of that this is even impacting us. Even denial that it's even happening.
It might be comical, but it is certainly not funny.
It's sad that elected school board members think when we're losing a loss of students is something to ridicule. Me as a person that brings it up, it's really kind of sad, but hey, that's the way it is. You could say that's politics, I guess. I'd like to think that there's most politics. I work for the federal government. I know this is a side topic, but when I worked for the federal government, we were very tight. When people asked something, answers were given. And when I see the school, when I got elected to the school board, I was really appalled at the lack of accountability that the school had toward the public and toward the parents, toward the students, and toward our staff. And I was going to tell you this in our previous segment, Marcia, but it's really kind of important. Again, been a contract administrator for the federal government, and I was a contract officer's representative, is called. The guy that holds the money in the federal government is called a contracting officer, and I always worked for them. I didn't control the money. I just administered the contracts. Money came up, but there was a change order. I had to go to my CO and say, hey, I need more money. Well, one of my COs told me, he was starting kind of following the paper, and just happened talking to him one day and sitting over coffee at work, and he said, you better resign from the school board. I said, why? He said, because this is being done so wrong that, I mean, if you were in the federal government, all you people would probably be in jail.
Oh my goodness.
And now the federal government isn't considered to be a star of accountability, although I think certainly parts of the federal government are. But I'm just saying that, as I think that he was exaggerating a little bit, but the point is that when you have an administration abetted by a school board that doesn't even want to talk about following enrollment, it's not a good sign for government. Government, you can say that, well, just because we educate children doesn't mean that the school has carte blanche to do whatever they want to do. We are still supported by taxpayers. Educating children is very important. It's too important to say that you don't have any, there's no accountability. You don't have to answer your Data Practice Act request. You don't have to address the dropping enrollment. School is too important to make that kind of a claim, I think. Obviously, some people on the school board think that it doesn't matter at all and that, hey, everything is hunky-dory, who cares? But I don't think that way. So getting back to your question about the dropping enrollment, we have, there's a lot of talk about dropping enrollment, and I brought that up just to give you where we're at. Back in 1975, we had 25,000 students in the Duluth public schools. Now we have a little over 8,000. Do the numbers, that's less about 30% students what we used to have. That's an enormous drop. Now, okay, what's happened to Duluth? Duluth at that time, Duluth had a population of about 100,000. I think it was 105,000 according to the 1970 census. Now we have a population of 86,000. Yes, we've lost about 15,000 population in Duluth and on. You would obviously expect our school students to have reduced enrollment too. Obviously our enrollment has dropped by a factor of 3, yet our population went down a lot. Okay, we all know women don't have as many babies, smaller family sizes. We have an aging population in Duluth. We've had a declining population, but it's also an aging population. And there's a lot of reasons why we don't have 25,000 students anymore. Part of that is just the demographics. A large part is that women don't have as many babies. That's just the way society, our world is. It isn't just America. No, women don't have as many babies as they used to. So we have less students. But why? How do we go from 25,000 students down to 8? If you look at the demographics, the number of school-aged children has actually reduced a lot. The number of school-aged children right now in Duluth is around 12,000. So even if every student in Duluth that was school-aged went to the Duluth schools, we'd probably have about 12,000 students. But okay, we have 8. Okay, where these other 4,000 go? 12,000 is a serious factor. And in Faraday, the long-range facility plan was addressing an issue. It's been known that we've had a declining population in Duluth. We have a declining school-age enrollment, and that we probably had to do something. Now that brings up another topic. That why is Duluth declining? It seems like we should be a prosperous city. We have a beautiful environment, a beautiful park system. There's a beautiful history here, very interesting history. Why do we have a reduced population? Hey, I don't have the answer to that, Marcia, but it is sad that Duluth isn't doing as well population-wise, industry-wise. Why aren't there many young people here? Because there's no jobs here. Let's face it, folks, we don't have jobs in Duluth. And you look at other areas like Mankato, Rochester, St. Cloud, Moorhead, Brainerd almost has as many kids in their schools now as Duluth does, believe it or not. They're about 7,000, Duluth has 8,000. And Brainerd used to be a little town. Their school is almost as big as our school. Okay, so where did everybody go? Okay, we know we've lost about half the kids just because there's not as many kids in town anymore. The rest of them, Duluth is a unique area. South of us, southwest of us, we have Renshaw, we have Carlton, we have Cloquet, we have Esco. West of us, we have Proctor, we have Hermantown. Of course, northeast of us, we have Two Harbors. People who live in West Duluth, I'm the West Duluth rep, it's closer to them to send their kids to the Renshaw School than it is to go to Lincoln Park Middle School. And consequently, a lot of the kids go there. We have a lot of students that have went to other schools. Okay, of course, the million-dollar question is why? Of course, I think I don't have an answer to that, but I think that certainly the dysfunctionalism of the school, the lack of accountability that we've talked about here. If you have a good open system, people are willing to send their kids there. If you have a system where you go after people, there's a lot of HR problems here. We have a big achievement gap. We have large class sizes. Look at the lawsuit that went after me. It was very embarrassing. Who wouldn't want to send their kids to a school where the school board and the superintendent is literally trying to remove a school board member? I mean, I think you put two and two together, all that has something to do with it.
A lot of it is atmosphere, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
The atmosphere of what's going on in the district, and the
Right.
parents see this.
Right.
They see, and I mean, okay, let's stop for a minute and hit on one thing in particular. At Denfeld, 24 teachers did not sign the letter, but wrote the letter. 24 teachers, I don't even know how many are at Denfeld, but complaining that students were coming to them with nothing more than a 5th grade math and reading skills. At 11th grade, there was 2 teachers, I saw them this past spring, sit there at a business committee meeting, education committee meeting, and say that these kids are unprepared to do science and math at an 11th grade level. Well, parents know what's going on with their children when they come home and they're having difficulty. They want the best for their students. Some of them stay around and think everything's hunky-dory, but others know that there's a problem, and so they take them and they put them in a different educational system. What baffled me was, why would a parent take their kid out of school a few weeks into the school year? I kept asking Art, what's the problem here? What is going on? Or just before the school year ends, they're taking their kids out and sticking them someplace else. All parents aren't stupid. They know that there's problems. And so, yes, that's the reason for dropping enrollment. That is all part of it. I know that. And bullying is one of the problems they have not solved, because they're busy bullying each other at the administration level. That's going on in the school system. They aren't stopping it where it needs to start, at the helm. Administration has a lot to do with the whole atmosphere of what's going on in the school district.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a school board, we should be setting some of that atmosphere. Of course, you can see what we've done for the last 2 years. What a disgrace. I mean, we are, and I'm 1/7 of that. I'll take the blame on that as well. I'm 1/7 of the school board, but what have we done to make a good environment for the school? Nothing, absolutely nothing. I think that is. I mean, you're absolutely right, though. People have pulled their kids out of the school. I mean, if we look at the declining enrollment, the student, or the number of student age, or kids with student or school age, has basically plateaued. It plateaued about 10 years ago. We still have about that $12,000. Look at the census, that's where it's at. 12,000 students.
Population.
Yeah, 12,000 kids of student age. In Duluth, that hasn't really changed, but yet in 10 years, we've lost, oh boy, what have we lost? We lost close to 2,000 students in Duluth schools in 10 years, and yet the population hasn't went down. They have went around, and of course I forgot to mention that we have 3 charter schools, because as your question started out about the Edison charter schools. We have Harbor City, we have Edison charter schools, we have North Shore charter schools, yeah. And I'm missing one. There's another charter school. We also have a Catholic school system here, which that goes up to 8th grade. And we have Marshall, which used to be Duluth Cathedral. It's not affiliated with the church anymore, but that used to be Duluth Cathedral. They're full. They're 4 to 12. That's what grades they have. So we have really a lot of competition. And if you look at all the numbers of all the neighboring schools, all the charter schools, all the private schools, the parochial schools, none of them have lost any students at all.
No, they've actually gained in the
Right.
last few years.
Yes.
They've gained.
All the losses happened to the Duluth Public Schools.
Right.
So kind of your opening statement was, or concern was, well, what impact is the Edison School going to have on us? I don't think it's going to have a big impact because right now our population is going like this. It's been doing that for 10 years.
So it's just going to have the impact will still continue.
Well, we kept hoping that somehow this population was going to the decline would decrease. The derivative of the decline would go to zero eventually. Well, unfortunately, it's still going down, and that really does concern me because of all our fixed costs. Getting back to your question, how much money do we come in? How big a deal is this? Every student from the state, we get close to $11,000 from the state. Now that we have $11,000 per student. Now, well, that's total. If you look at just a general fund, we get about $5,800 per student. Then we get a bunch of other money. We get integration money. We get there's a lot of other funds we get besides just the standard formula. So all in all, this is what the state figures. All you got to do is get a calculator. We get $80 million, $90 million from the state. We've got 8,000 students. Hey, get all your calculator. It's about 11,000. That's standard everywhere in the state, pretty much. We get that. Now, if you throw in the feds, we get another. If you look at our total budget. We get as close to $15,000 per student that we get if you throw in local and feds as well. So you figure every student we lose is about $15,000.
Oh my. Okay.
If you look at, we lost 2,000 students pretty much since I've been on the school board. Not quite, but let's use 2,000 numbers. It's a round number. 2,000 times 15,000 is $30 million. If the population of our enrollment would be the same as it was when I got on the school board, we'd have $30 million more in revenue. Now that's a two-edged sword, some people say. Well, if we have that many students, we also have more expenses. We have to hire more teachers. Well, of course, that makes sense. And I've actually heard some people, including the superintendent, say, well, it doesn't really matter if we lose students because, hey, we got less expenses. Well, okay, what's the problem with that theory? Is our fixed costs.
Exactly.
We have fixed costs on our debt. We pay about $23 million a year in debt payments and will for almost another 20 years. We have utility costs, we got electric costs, we got to repair the roof once in a while, we got to put in new windows, we got to replace the carpeting, we got to buy new textbooks, we have to put new paint the walls. I mean, we got to buy new desks every once in a while. Those are all fixed costs that we're going to have. We have to transport people. That's almost a fixed cost. If you have less students, you still got to have buses go out to Fond du Lac. You got to have buses that go up to Lakewood. They got to go around. And if those buses are full or if they're half empty, it's about the same cost. Not exactly, but that fixed cost is tough. And these schools are planned to have, I don't know, according to the long-range facility plan, they were expecting us to have about 10,000 students. We're down to about 8. So it is a big burden on us. And now when Edison opens a high school, that's going to be opening in the fall of 2017, I understand. And they are expecting to have about 600 kids in the high school. Right now they only have a K-8 program, and they're going to extend that up. I think they've got about 1,500 kids enrolled now, and if they extend that up to grade 12, you just do the math, they're probably going to have 500-600 students they're expecting to do.
They're not going to come from the 8th grade to the Duluth School District anymore, which they're forced to do now because they don't have another alternative.
Right.
those kids will go directly into their school system, which will eliminate that many students more from the district.
Yes, and now they're also going to pull some kids from Proctor and
Right.
Hermantown, maybe from Marshall. Marshall's a private school, they have fairly high tuition. So some of that, they're going to say, oh, look at that, I can have this school. Now, the interesting things about this is that we have to be competitive because this is a competitive market. The charter schools, Minnesota was the first state that had charter schools. I'm not an advocate necessarily for charter schools. Ideally, a situation I would have is that all our students would grow up together. They would go to school with their friends. The parents in the neighborhood would belong to the PTA. The students everybody knows everybody. It's a good homogeneous thing. I think it makes it more
Community.
It's a community.
Yep.
We don't have that anymore in Duluth, unfortunately. We don't. It's getting slim. The community is getting slim. So we don't have that, and I'd like to have that community. Okay, folks, we don't have it anymore, so we don't. So, okay, cross that option off because it's no longer there. We have charter schools. Like it or not, we have charter schools, and it's kind of ironic. Not ironic, it's very interesting. A lot of people don't say they don't like charter schools, some of the school board members and some teachers, for example. But teachers were at one time promoters of charter schools that thought it would give them flexibility from the bureaucracy to be able to have freedom to teach. I think we need that. I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator, I'm not educated and educating. I do know that there's good teachers and there's good ways to teach and there's maybe not such good ways. I think the charter schools, the original of their philosophy was to allow teachers that freedom, that creativity, all kids are vibrant. They have all these interests all over. If they're into art or into mathematics or physics or music, whatever it may be, that's our children. We have to be able to do that, and I think it takes good flexibility from our students or our teachers. And so charter schools were supposed to give that. I find it somewhat ironic now that some teachers now don't say they don't like charter schools. But it's important to clarify that charter schools are public schools.
Yes, they are.
There is absolutely virtually nothing different between charter schools and public schools. They are supported by taxpayers, just like public schools. They have a charter. That charter is what allows them the freedom to promote whatever their charter happens to be. If it's better academics, if it's more languages, if it's
environmental, which is North Shore Elementary, is environmental.
Yes, and that's how they attract people. And that there's only one thing different about charter schools and public schools is that charter schools board is elected by the staff, not elected by the public, where I'm elected by the public. Of course, it's somewhat ironic. You look at the school board tried to remove me just like a charter school would have done. So there's, the Duluth schools are acting like a charter school, even though some people profess not to like charter schools, but yet they spent $200,000 to remove me. Obviously, they couldn't. So what's the difference? We have charter schools. You're going back to why are the charter schools? Why is Edison building a new school? Because there's a demand.
Yes.
I've talked to Minnesota Department of Education. I talk to them a lot, obviously. I go down there personally and get information, find out what I can to do my job. And when I first started going down there, maybe you went down there with me once, Marcia, here 8 years ago probably, but one of the people there told me that, remember, the long-range facility plan is $320 million, $50 million, did not have a vote. It was very unique in the country. There was not a referendum. And another loophole. Duluth schools go to finding loopholes. We shouldn't function as a loophole. We should function as a transparent body. But anyway, they told me that it's going to take years for that to heal in Duluth. I mean, it was divisive to have that massive a project to not have a vote. It was obviously divisive. I think it was extremely poor. I got elected because I thought that I wanted to keep our community schools. I wanted to have a vote. And I got elected, but unfortunately we didn't have enough other people got elected to be able to make sure we had a vote. So MD.
And maybe that's the next step, is for the public to demand removal of somebody who obviously isn't qualified and isn't doing his job properly and is probably manipulating, and that's my opinion, manipulating behind the scenes to get what he wants.
Well, I'm positive. Again, I won my lawsuit. The school wasn't able to remove me for trumped up garbage, as I call it, for false information. The positive stuff is that wherever I go, people say, keep doing what you do. I just want to tell people that this is our government, this is our children, this is our infrastructure. People of Duluth own these schools. Of course, our children, we're responsible for our children. And I see that outgoing support for me wherever I go. If I'm into Walgreens, if I'm at Vertical Endeavors Climbing, it doesn't matter. I mean, whenever I go out in public, I get an outflow of gratitude from people, and that's gratifying. So I think we have to be positive. Other things that we can be positive about is we do have a new school board. The people that went after me did not run again, didn't get reelected, obviously, and that's a positive sign. I'm hopeful for the new school board. We have three new school board members, and I'm hopeful that they will think that let's do it right this time. Let's not go after straw dogs. Let's put our children as our priority. I think we have a lot. We do have new schools, like it or not. We have new schools. They got to be paid for, but we do have new schools. Some of the things we can learn, I think we can learn from some of our charter schools. For example, Harbor City, they don't have an achievement gap, and yet they have the same demographics. Same number. They have a higher number of free and reduced lunch, for example. They have the same number of minority kids, if not more, than we do. Yet they don't have an achievement gap. Why? Because I want to thank our teachers. This is not a thing about our teachers. I think we have our good teachers in the Duluth schools. I think we have to give them that flexibility and creativity to do it. The charter schools are doing it. The test scores are better in Edison. The test scores are way, way better in places like Harbor City. They're also better in places like in Renshaw. These little schools, they're doing their job, and that's why we're losing population. As soon as we start dealing with the achievement gap, we start dealing with our low graduation rates, people will know and they will start coming back. We don't have to tell people that we're great. We don't need PR people to tell us that, hey, we're a great school. No. That will be done when we have a German 5, we have Spanish 5, we have a chamber orchestra again in Denville, we have 7 hours in our middle schools, and our graduation rates go up from Denville from 70% up to 95% like it should be. We will have students again, and I think we can do it with the new board. I'm very hopeful. Well, let's hope that 2016 brings more positive than the last few years, 8 years of wrangling over this. And appreciate you coming in again today, Art, and explaining some of these things. We'll have to come back soon and talk about the achievement gap and see if there's anything that can be done about that in the future here. So thanks again for coming in. Have a great day. Well, thanks for your interest.